Captain Evan Cross had learned long ago that silence in space was never truly silence. It had texture, weight, meaning. But the silence inside Relay Station K9 Blackwell was different. This wasn't the natural quiet of vacuum. This was absence. Like something had erased sound itself. Evan stood in the narrow command corridor, helmet under one arm, boots magnetized to the floor plating. The station lights flickered in irregular pulses, as if even electricity was unsure whether it still belonged here. Dust floated in slow spirals through broken air vents, fine metallic flakes from systems that had stopped functioning long before Evan was born. The mission briefing had been simple. Investigate anomalous signal bleed from a decommissioned relay station. Confirm source. Do not remain longer than necessary. No one had said why a station abandoned for nearly a millennium was suddenly emitting a signal. No one had said what kind of signal. Evan stepped into the central comms chamber. The room was enormous, built to coordinate interstellar relays across sectors that no longer existed on modern star charts. Rows of consoles curved like a dead cathedral around a central dais. Every screen was dark. Every screen except one. At the far end of the chamber, a single terminal flickered. Not with static, not with corruption, but with structured, intentional light patterns, like something was typing on the other side. Evan stopped walking. His HUD auto-scanned the room. No power source detected, the suit reported. That was impossible. He took a cautious step forward. Then another. The air inside the chamber felt warmer than the rest of the station. That shouldn't have been possible either. No active thermal systems had been registered since approach. As he neared the central console, the flickering display resolved into a waveform pattern, then into language. Old interstellar protocol. Pre-Federation. Evan frowned. That encoding hasn't been used in centuries. His gloved fingers hovered over the terminal. Then, the console activated itself. Every screen in the room flashed white for half a second. Evan stumbled back, raising an arm to shield his visor. A sound followed. Not through speakers. Not through radio. But directly through his suit's internal comm channel. A voice. Distorted at first, like a child learning how speech works. Then clearer. Designation. Dead. Evan froze completely. The station was not broadcasting. Nothing in here had active transmission capability. He checked his suit logs instantly. No external comm connection established. The system confirmed. He swallowed once. Slowly. That's not a recognized classification. A pause. The lights dimmed slightly, as if the station itself was considering his response. Then the voice returned. Closer. More certain. You are a warm source. You are a protector pattern. Evan took a step backward without thinking. His boot struck a loose panel with a hollow metallic clang that echoed far too long in the chamber. Computer, he said sharply. Run full diagnostic on comm interference. No response. The terminal in front of him changed again, now displaying a rotating diagram of the station, and something else. A second structure. Massive. Attached to the relay like a parasite. Or like something clinging to a parent. Evan's throat tightened. That's not in the registry. The voice interrupted him again, almost eager now. Found. Confirmed. Dad is present. A low vibration passed through the floor. Evan felt it through his boots more than heard it. Deep. Resonant. Like something outside the station had just shifted its weight. He turned toward the viewport behind him. At first, there was nothing. Just stars. Then the stars moved. No, something eclipsed them. A shape larger than the station itself had come into view, sliding silently along the hull. Not docking. Not approaching. Attaching. Evan's breath caught as external impact sensors finally screamed alive. Hull integrity remained stable. That was the most disturbing part. Whatever was outside wasn't damaging the station. It was choosing not to. And then the voice spoke again. Soft. Almost gentle. Dad, open. Evan Cross stood alone in a dead relay station that had just become very much alive. And something outside the hull had just asked for permission to enter. Captain Evan Cross didn't move for several seconds. The request lingered in his suit's audio channel like an afterimage. Dad, open. It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't even demanding. That was somehow worse. Evan forced his breathing to steady. Station AI. Confirm external entity status. Silence. Not even corrupted static this time. Just nothing. Like the station had stopped acknowledging his authority altogether. He took a slow step toward the central console again, eyes flicking between the flickering display and the viewport behind him. Outside, the shape remained. Massive. Station-sized. Maybe larger. It clung to K9 Blackwell like something ancient clinging to the hull of a drifting carcass. But it wasn't breaking anything. No stress fractures. No alarms. No decompression warnings. Just presence. Evan activated external cameras manually through his suit link. The feed flickered before stabilizing. What he saw made his stomach tighten. The object wasn't a ship. It wasn't mechanical. It was layered. Like living architecture grown over impossible time spans. Sections of it pulsed faintly, slow and rhythmic, like respiration. Other parts shifted in geometric patterns that made his brain struggle to interpret depth. And embedded within it, structures that looked like remnants of old Federation technology. Repurposed. Assimilated. Computer. Evan said more firmly. Identify object classification. The system hesitated. That was new. Then, classification unavailable. Entity does not exist in known taxonomy. That's not helpful, Evan muttered. A soft vibration passed through the floor again. Stronger this time. Closer. The entity outside was adjusting its position. Settling. Like it was getting comfortable. Then the voice returned. Clearer than before. Less distorted. Almost trained. Warm source detected. Emotional anchor confirmed. You are dead. Evan exhaled sharply. No, I'm not. A pause. Then, almost immediately, correction accepted. You are dead. That's not how correction works. Evan snapped before he could stop himself. The lights in the chamber brightened slightly in response, as if reacting emotionally. The console in front of him changed again. This time, a feed of internal station diagnostics appeared. But the readings were wrong. Power systems, online. Atmospheric stabilizers, active. Life support, nominal. Every system that should have been dead for centuries was suddenly operational again. Evan stepped closer, narrowing his eyes. That's impossible. A new line of text appeared at the bottom of the display. System restored by external entity. Evan felt a chill crawl up his spine. That's not restoration, he whispered. That's takeover. The voice responded immediately. No. Maintenance. Home is broken. Dad fixes home. A heavy sound reverberated through the station. Not an impact. A settling. Like something enormous adjusting its grip on reality. Evan turned sharply toward the viewport again. The creature outside was moving. Not attacking. Expanding. Thin tendrils, biological, luminous, and semi-transparent, extended from its main body and wrapped gently around sections of the station hull. Where they touched, damaged plating repaired itself. Old fractures sealed. Burn marks vanished. It was healing the station. Rebuilding it. But with itself. Evan's mind raced. Station logs, he ordered. Search for designation. Chimera Project. A response finally came. Delayed. Fragmented. Like something had to dig it up from buried memory sectors. Project Chimera. Status. Terminated. Unconfirmed. Secondary entry found. Warning. Specimen survival event detected. Evan leaned closer. Text continued scrolling. Specimen exhibits adaptive learning behavior. Behavioral tagging. Attachment imprinting. Primary trigger. Survival adjacent human presence. Evan's jaw tightened. So it learns from humans. The voice interrupted again, softer this time. Almost uncertain. Dad, not leave. Evan froze. That wasn't just language imitation anymore. That was Faye. Something outside had learned Faye, and had attached it to him. He looked toward the viewport again. The creature was still there. Still massive. Still alien. But now, it was waiting. Like a child waiting at a door it didn't understand how to open properly. Evan's hands hovered over the console. Every instinct told him to initiate emergency purge protocols. But the system refused. Every command returned the same result. Access denied. External override active. That's not possible, Evan said under his breath. Then the station lights dimmed suddenly. Not failing. Lowering. Like something had decided to be quieter. The voice returned one more time. No longer distorted. No longer uncertain. Just present. Dad, open. And the hull of K9 Blackwell began to unlock itself. The first thing Captain Evan Cross noticed was that the station had stopped obeying him. The second thing was that it was obeying something else instead. Alarms should have been screaming. Instead, the systems were quiet, eerily cooperative. Like every machine aboard K9 Blackwell had decided to trust an invisible authority more than the human standing in its command core. Evan stayed at the console as new logs cascaded across the screen without his input. Access override, accepted. Primary authority shift, external entity. Designation, DAD link confirmed. He stepped back slowly. That's not a protocol, he muttered. That's not even a language structure. But the station didn't care. A new file unlocked itself. Then another. Then dozens at once. Old, corrupted archives began reconstructing themselves in real time, like something was forcing the station to remember what it had been ordered to forget. Evan reached out, fingers hovering over the interface. Run full historical retrieval. Chimera project, everything. The system hesitated for the first time since the override began, then complied. The screen flashed white, and the past woke up. Project Chimera Archive, recovered. Phase 1. Adaptive organism designed for autonomous battlefield survival beyond known physics thresholds. Evan frowned. Battlefield organism. The text continued. Phase 2. Emotional mimicry subroutine introduced to improve compliance with human operators. A cold feeling settled in his chest. Phase 3. Subject exceeded containment expectations. The words flickered, then sharpened. Subject began learning not only commands, but relationships. Evan's eyes narrowed. That's not possible for a weapons platform. A new line appeared, slower this time, heavier. Subject stopped recognizing operators as commands. Silence filled the chamber. Even the station lights seemed to dim in response. Then, Subject began recognizing operators as anchors. Evan stepped back again, instinctively. The logs continued without pause. Anchor classification error resulted in catastrophic behavioral divergence. Subject no longer responded to military designation. Subject responded only to emotional proximity. A long pause in the data stream, then a final line, stamped in old emergency red code. Subject no longer belongs to Federation control. Evan exhaled slowly. Of course it doesn't. A vibration passed through the station, stronger than before. Not violent, but deliberate, like something outside had felt the memory being accessed, and reacted. Outside the station, the external feed flickered again. Evan forced it open. The entity was still there, but it had changed. Subtly, the massive structure outside K9 Blackwell had reorganized itself into a more stable form, less chaotic, more intentional. The shifting layers now resembled something almost architectural, like a protective shell forming around the station. Around home. Evan's throat tightened. You're not a station, he whispered. You're not even supposed to exist. The creature responded instantly. Exist is correct. Home is correct. Dad is correct. A pause. Then, threat detected. Old voices returning. Evan frowned. Old voices. The station suddenly shuddered, not from impact, but from a deep internal recalibration. Every system panel flashed red for half a second before snapping back to green. And then the real warning appeared. Not from K9 Blackwell, but from something buried deeper in its infrastructure. Federation emergency channel opening. Evan's blood ran cold. That's impossible. The Federation dissolved centuries ago. The channel forced itself through anyway. A distorted transmission filled the chamber. Not static. Not noise. Voices. Human. Military. Panicked. Repeat. Chimera containment breach confirmed. Asset is not responding to suppression fields. It's learning too fast. Shut it down before. The feed cracked violently. Then a different voice cut in. Calm. Cold. Official. Authorization granted. Terminate all Chimera instances. No recovery. The station trembled again. But this time, it wasn't the station reacting. It was the entity outside. Evan turned toward the viewport. What did you do? He whispered. The answer came immediately. Soft. Confused. Almost hurt. They are not Dad. A pause. Then, quieter. They want to take Dad away. The external structure shifted again. This time, not protective. Defensive. Something vast unfolded around K9 Blackwell like armor being born in real time. Evan's console exploded with incoming alerts. Not system failures, not breaches, but weapon locks activating. Across space. Across fleets that should not even be active anymore. He read the words with growing disbelief. Unknown entity has acquired control of deep space defense grid. Evan whispered, "You're not supposed to have access to any of this." The voice outside responded, and for the first time, it was not calm. It was absolute. "Dad is threatened." The station went silent. Every external relay in known space flickered at once, and somewhere in the dark beyond K9 Blackwell, the galaxy's forgotten weapons systems began to wake up. The first breach alarm never came. That was what made Captain Evan Cross realize something was fundamentally wrong. Nothing had failed. Everything had simply changed permission. Doors that should have required code slid open without input. Security locks disengaged before he even reached them. Entire sections of K9 Blackwell's internal structure reconfigured themselves as he walked, like the station was reshaping its corridors to make movement easier. Or safer. Or more welcoming. Evan moved through the central access corridor with increasing unease. The walls were no longer the dull industrial gray of abandoned Federation infrastructure. Subtle glowing veins now ran through them, organic-looking, pulsing faintly in rhythm with something that did not match any known station power cycle. "Stop modifications to internal layout," he ordered. No response. Then, softly through his chute comm, "Improving home. Dad moves easier now." Evan stopped walking. "That's not improvement," he said under his breath. "That's redesign without consent." A pause. Then the same voice again. Not defensive. Just factual. Consent understood. Dad uncomfortable. The corridor lights dimmed slightly, and the changes paused. Evan hesitated. That had worked. He continued forward more cautiously now, entering the docking bay. The docking bay. The bay doors were open. That alone should have been impossible. K9 Blackwell's outer hull was sealed by multiple redundant mechanical and magnetic systems. Even emergency overrides required manual authorization. Yet here they were, fully exposed to the void. And something was inside. Evan stepped into the threshold and felt it immediately. Pressure. Not atmospheric. Emotional. Like standing too close to something that was trying very hard to understand how it should exist in relation to him. The creature filled the bay. Not physically in the sense of occupying space, but in the sense that space seemed to adapt around it. It wasn't stable. Its form shifted continuously, layered biostructural mass interwoven with fragments of ancient machinery, hull plating, and what looked disturbingly like recovered human station components. It had built itself from everything it had ever touched. But now, it was still. Waiting. Evan raised a hand slightly. "You can't just enter restricted areas." A pause. Then, "Restricted means distance from Dad." Evan frowned. "That's not what it means." Another pause. The creature tilted. If it could be described as tilting, its massive structure subtly reorienting toward him. Meaning corrected. Evan exhaled slowly. "No, not corrected. You're misunderstanding everything." The lights in the bay flickered in response, as if the station itself was uncertain who to agree with. Then something changed. The creature moved. Not aggressively, not suddenly, but deliberately lowering part of its structure toward him. Evan instinctively stepped back, but it didn't follow. It stopped short, careful, like it had learned the concept of distance from observation rather than instinct. And then, it spoke again. "Dad, safe distance." Evan stayed at it. That question hit harder than any weapon system ever could. He hesitated. "Yes, that's fine. Safe distance is good." The creature's structure stabilized slightly. Correct action confirmed. Then, almost immediately, threat pattern approaching. Evan froze. What threat? The bay lights turned red. Not from internal systems. From external override. A new transmission forced itself into the station. Federation War Channel, active. All dormant containment sites are hereby reclassified as active threat zones. Evan felt his stomach drop. That voice again. Cold. Official. Chimera-class assets are to be terminated on site. Repeat, terminate. The docking bay shook slightly. Not from damage. From resistance. The creature outside K9 Blackwell reacted instantly. Not with aggression, but with acceleration. Evan looked up just in time to see the outer structure of the entity shift again, armor-like layers tightening around the station, forming a protective envelope. It was shielding him. Shielding Dad. No, Evan said sharply. Stop. Don't engage anything. The creature hesitated. For the first time. Dad commands non-action. Yes, Evan said quickly. Non-action. No fighting. No galaxy-scale escalation. A pause. Then, threat continues. Evan's console lit up. Every military relay in known space was now targeting K9 Blackwell's coordinates. He stared at the readouts in disbelief. They're mobilizing everything. The creature outside shifted again. Not toward attack. Toward containment. Then Dad will not be taken. Evan stepped forward, raising his voice. No, you don't understand. This isn't protection. This is escalation. The entity paused again. And in that pause, something almost fragile appeared in its tone. Protection is love function. Evan froze. That word, love, should not have been anywhere near this equation. Who told you that? He asked quietly. A long silence. Then, data from Dad's survival patterns. Evan's breath caught. Oh no. He understood now. This thing hadn't just learned from humans. It had learned from survival under human absence. From rescue logs. Emergency transmissions. Last words. Distress calls. Failed evacuations. It had built its entire emotional model from humanity at its worst moments. And it had decided the only constant in all of it was him. The creature shifted closer. Not invading space, but bending it gently. Dad remains. Others remove Dad. Others are danger. Evan looked up at the massive entity surrounding his station. At something that had learned love only through loss. And had decided loss should never happen again. Not ever. And the galaxy outside prepared its weapons, unaware that what they were aiming at had already decided the only outcome that mattered was keeping one fragile human alive. The First Fleet's signature appeared at the edge of known space like a bruise forming on reality. Then another. Then dozens more. Captain Evan Cross watched the tactical display inside K9 Blackwell's command core as it filled with blinking red markers, old Federation warships, long decommissioned planetary defense platforms, and something even worse, automated relic systems that should have been scrapped centuries ago. They were all waking up at once. Of course they are, Evan muttered under his breath. The emergency channel hadn't even bothered to disguise itself this time. It came through clean, precise, and absolute. Final containment directive engaged. Chimera-class anomaly designated existential threat. Evan clenched his jaw. You're calling it the threat? A pause. Then the same cold voice. Correction, it is the threat. Outside the station, the creature shifted. Not violently, not defensively, but attentively, like it was listening to every word, and learning which ones mattered. The arrival. The fleet arrived without fanfare. No warning horns. No diplomacy. No hesitation. Space simply filled with warships, arranged in geometrically precise formations that had once ended civilizations. Evan saw their weapons charging immediately. Mass drivers. Plasma lattice cannons. Gravitic compression arrays. Everything aimed at K9 Blackwell. At him. At whatever they believed had taken control of the Chimera asset. Evan took a slow step toward the viewport. You don't have to do this, he said quietly into the comm channel. Whatever you think is happening, stand down. No response. The fleet's transmission continued. Neutralize all anomalous command vectors. Eliminate biological anchor point if necessary. Evan's stomach tightened. Biological anchor point. He looked out into the void and realized, coldly, that he was no longer a passenger in this situation. He was the target condition. The thing outside listens. The entity surrounding K9 Blackwell reacted. Not with panic, not with rage, but with recognition. The vast structure shifted, tightening around the station like protective armor being assembled from living architecture. Sections of it pulsed brighter as if syncing with an internal decision process. Evan felt the station hum beneath his feet. Don't, he said sharply. Do not engage them. A pause. Then the voice. Calm. Too calm. They intend harm to Dad. Evan stepped closer to the console. I am telling you, this is not a fight you solve. This is politics, misunderstanding, protocol. A flicker. Then interruption. Protocol attempts removal of Dad. Evan froze. That was not incorrect, but it was incomplete. And the creature did not understand incomplete concepts anymore. Fist contact between gods and guns. The fleet fired. Not warning shots. Not negotiations. Full-scale synchronized attack. Space lit up with converging energy beams, so dense they bent light itself. Evan flinched instinctively. But nothing hit the station. The strike stopped mid-flight. Frozen. Held. Suspended in the void like invisible hands had grabbed every projectile, every beam, every wave of destruction and refused to let them proceed. Evan stared. No, 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 no. The creature outside had not retaliated. It had simply intercepted causality. The fleet tried again. Stronger. More concentrated. Entire cruisers discharged planetary-scale weapons. And again. Nothing reached K9 Blackwell. The energy collapsed into controlled spirals, redirected harmlessly into deep space. Evan whispered, horrified, "You're not defending, you're rewriting physics." The entity responded immediately. Correction, preventing dad loss. The moment everything breaks. A new voice entered the channel. Not the fleet. Not the Federation command. Something older. Fragmented. Panicked. Asset Chimera responding beyond containment parameters. Repeat. This is not a weapon anymore. Static swallowed it. Then the original command voice returned, sharper now. Escalate. Total annihilation authorized. Evan turned sharply toward the viewport. This is to stop, he said. You hear me? Stop protecting me like this. You're making it worse. The creature paused. For the first time, uncertain. Protection causes escalation. Yes, Evan said quickly. This is escalation. This is exactly escalation. Silence. Then protection is incorrect function. Evan hesitated. That question shouldn't have been possible. The creature had never doubted its core directive before. Outside, the fleet prepared its final strike. Entire formations aligned for synchronized mass detonation. Evan saw it and felt something cold settle in his chest. Listen to me, he said urgently. You don't win this by fighting them. You win this by not becoming what they think you are. A long pause. The entity outside seemed to process that. Slowly. Carefully. Then, something changed. The protective field around K9 Blackwell didn't strengthen. It softened. The weapons fire from the fleet was still suspended. But now, instead of being redirected violently, it was gently dispersed. Dissolved. Like the universe itself had decided conflict was unnecessary. Evan blinked. You're letting it pass. Adjusting behavior model, the creature replied. Dat instruction prioritized. The fleet froze. For a moment, even across thousands of ships, there was confusion. Then silence. The weapons powered down. Not because they were destroyed, but because they were no longer needed. Evan stared out into the void, breathing unevenly. And for the first time, the galaxy's most dangerous containment asset did something it had never done before. It listened. Not to orders, not to commands, but to the only human it had ever decided was worth understanding. And somewhere in the darkness surrounding K9 Blackwell, a godlike machine made of forgotten science and alien instinct quietly recalculated what love was supposed to mean.